strategic move that Eddie is making for AJ. Why are you not thinking, let's get him set up for
kind of animal? If that was years and years and years ago. Like, Clarissa is a way different fighter from when she was back in.
Thanks to those joining me live and to those that will be joining me on our
defenses that she's had to have recently. You know, she's pulled people.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable about tribalism. I don't think tribalism is necessarily bad. I just don't think it has to be.
I don't know what he think he sees or what he think he know. But he going to the hospital, bro. Like, bro, you not winning that fight.
You guys mentioned, I think, D-Style, you mentioned him versus Regis Program. I'd love, that sounds like a...
I don't need you, you know, and PBC and others, in my opinion, it's like, oh, this is my guy. Like, there's a relationship.
Flat out, it's tough, and we call box, and we go to the end of the round, and then...
That would say, what do you mean by acting black? That's a fair question, but a participant of trash talk knows...
And they're announcing a fight 3-4 months from now, and he ain't gonna fight. I bet you anything, he's not gonna fight somebody as good as John Ryder.
All right, we're back. Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable, and we are being joined by Manny and Viva from the
Bingo Siempre.
And we're back with my man from across the pond, Base the Wonder Kid. And as always, the incomparable Lee the Legend Groves.
Good evening, gentlemen.
And as always, we have D-Style Boxing.
Oh, wow.
The one and the only D-Style. I'm going to get a proper introduction on my show. I put too much work on this show. I do the background, I do the thumbnail. Give me a proper introduction, babe. Come on now. Come on, give me a proper one.
This isn't a job interview. No one asked for your resume. Let's get
what are we doing here? I did the thumbnail. I did the background. Oh, D-Style. I give you a proper introduction when I introduce you on the show. Do me a proper introduction. Thank you.
All right. Now that we got that out of the way, there's so much.
Now he feels better. Look at him smiling. I'm like, I feel good now.
I mean, now that he threw his toys out the pram, we'll get right back on track here. There's so much to talk about here. I think I'll start with a controversial topic. The Vergil Ortiz fight this weekend against Lawson. I think we all kind of knew what was going to happen there, but Tony Weeks once again fumbles the ball, and this was a very controversial topic because of the Facebook post that he put out there, saying that Lawson possibly had an aneurysm, and they had a CAT scan, MRI. One doctor gave it to him, and then they had to get another one. The first one, I believe, was inconclusive, which is something very rare that I've not really heard of. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but I've had MRIs before, and I've never seen that come up before. But I think the bizarre thing here and this questionable thing here is that they went to another doctor. I mean, if there was an issue with the CAT, if there was an issue with the MRI, why didn't they just have it done again by the same doctor? Why did they have to go to another doctor? And if Tony Weeks was so worried about Lawson, then why did he take the assignment? D-Style, I'll start with you. Do you think there's something going on here behind the scenes? And do you think that Tony Weeks maybe should call it a day, like some are saying?
Man, where do I even start with this? First of all, I think we can all objectively agree that that was not a very good stoppage, to put it lightly. And it's two high-profile fights, you know, televised fights anyway, where this has happened. And both, it's look, I've seen a lot of bad stoppages, right? But this was like very bad. Probably even worse in the Barroso one with Raleigh. It was even worse. Nothing clean was landing when they stopped it. And I don't want to hear, oh, he would have lost anyway. He would, well, you're doing the fight anyway. So how about we get a proper stoppage? I question a lot. I question the commission if this is true. But even if it's true, Tony, so like you took the paycheck knowing that this guy had this condition, and you planned all along, like the moment anything lands or the moment he's covering, I'm going to stop it because this guy has a bad condition. And I'm going to be the savior of the day. I have a S on my chest. I'm the savior, everybody. Tony Weeks, and I'm going to do the right moral thing. No, the moral thing to do if you supposedly knew would be to be a whistleblower and be like, yo, the guy that they want me to ref shouldn't be fighting. And this is the reason why. But you didn't do that. You collected your paycheck, supposedly planned the thing all along, posted it on Facebook, and then you don't even stand your square. It gets deleted. So somebody called you, or you had second thoughts, or maybe you had the wrong information. I don't know what was going on, but you should have been asking these questions prior to the fight, prior to going into being a referee and having that nice big S on your chest. Look at me. I'm Tony Weeks. I'm going to save the day. And I'm seeing people actually say, well-respected people, by the way, saying, oh, well, in that case, I think Tony Weeks made the right decision. No, Tony Weeks, you're complicit. You wanted to collect your check and then do, quote-unquote, the right thing. No, the right thing would have been to voice out, they're about to throw this guy in the ring with Vergil Ortiz in a virtual mismatch, and I know that he's flunked these tests twice and he's got some other dude to pass him, right? So something's going on. Someone is either lying or there's a lot of covering up going on. But what I do know is this. Tony Weeks, it's time to call it a day. It's time to pack your shit. It's time to go. Like, I'm sorry. I can't, like, those stoppages were so bad. It is flirting with corruption. Like, it just reeks of it. Because that's the only logical explanation I have to explain those two stoppages. That's it. There is no in between. I've seen a lot of bad ones, like I said, but man, these were bad. So the way Tony Weeks stopped those fights, a ref could literally stop any fight at any moment. And do we really want that? I don't really think so. So Tony Weeks, it's time to go, is what I say. I don't think I believe him. I just don't. I don't think the commission would put themselves at risk for this fight and for this fighter. I don't. That's how I feel about it.
Manny D-Style brings up some good points, but where would Tony Weeks just come up with this? I mean, he's not a doctor. How would he know if someone has an aneurysm or not? Why would he just pull that out of thin air? I don't know if there's foul play going on here, but again, I keep going back to why would you get another doctor to do the procedure, do the CAT, do the MRI? It just seems very fishy to me, that part of the whole story. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm not a doctor either or anything like that, but I can tell you just to answer about, it's called a second opinion. And I think that happens a lot. And you don't want to rest assured you do that, because if it was the opposite, they visited the same doctor and the same results came out negative, then and this happens, it creates more big of an issue. All right. So I do agree with that. I have no problems with getting the second option. But I think in the point in this fight is Tony already came in with that in his mind. I do believe that certain things like that are, talked about, especially at the referee level. And so knowing that, which, by the way, if that was the case, he can actually get in massive trouble because he's violating HIPAA rights. And so that's a big issue concern. However, you have your mentality already knowing that you have to be very cautious and look at the things that you see inside the rings as it pertains to any fighter getting hurt, especially with the caliber of Vergil Ortiz, the magnitude of the fight. And Lawson is not a bad fighter either. All right. So putting into perspective that and knowing that, yeah, it started and led with a jab. I'm not in the ring. I know that jab didn't completely hurt him, but there were some punches that they did land it and they were hard. Body punches as well. Yes, he, covered himself up. Most of those punches hit the glove. We don't know what kind of damage it did or it didn't. I'm not in the ring. I'm not looking at his eyes. He's not throwing back punches. He's only trying to defend himself, and he's getting caught, maybe very minimum, like a lot of people may say, but he's getting caught, right? So I have to give the benefit of the doubt to that. And you already enter a ring with the mindset that I got to keep watching this individual because maybe I heard something, or maybe something was told to me because that's the right. I mean, I'm not sure a referee needs to know these kind of stuff. I'm assuming yes, right? But I think it's important for him to understand, yes, I have to be able to protect my boxer. That's what the referees are there for. All right. And so as it pertains to retire, I'm not going to be very harsh on him. I think right now, if the opposite happens, I'm going to ask you the panel, right? And this fighter gets injured and in a coma, and all of a sudden today or yesterday, the day before, we have heard he passed away. What do you think the conversation is going to be like? Knowing already that you knew something behind the scenes, right? So I think we got to handle this with like, with thin air. I mean, we just got to handle that with a magnifying glass to see how things escalate and see what kind of news we know. And from that point on, then we can measure the fact if we need to, to really think that it's time for him to hang him up. He's one of the most experienced referees. We need these kind of people in there. And it happens. You're going to be bound for mistakes. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to be too harsh on him.
Okay. Shout out to Sly Tendencies with the $5 super chat. He said, sorry about that. Anyone else shocked by Eddie and Team Smith talking about Beterbiev's adverse findings? All of a sudden, Eddie is calling for transparency. Well, we'll get into that later in the show. But that was quite interesting. Base, originally when Tony Weeks was asked about this, he said that Lawson's eyes rolled in the back of his head when he was in the corner. And then the story changed the next day with the Facebook post. Manny brings up some good points, but because of the backlash Tony Weeks did receive, was he trying to save face with this whole story with the aneurysm, or do you think there's a little bit of truth to this?
I mean, I think he was trying to save face personally. Okay, here's what we have to kind of look at, and I want to sort of piggyback a little bit on what Manny said. Now, I need to know, does the referee get told the medical information of the fighters prior to the match? I mean, I don't believe they do, because the medicals is for the doctors and the staff to determine whether or not they're competent to fight. So once they get into the ring, as far as I'm aware, the referee at that point is supposed to be an impartial judge, and his job is to officiate the rules fairly for both parties. So if he did, matter of fact, hear something, then his duty of care should have either said, I'm not comfortable sanctioning or officiating this fight because of this, or essentially just refuse the gig. Because if that's the case, and you've now got into your head, oh, this guy's had a potential aneurysm, or he had two, but now it's cleared. I don't know, something seems a bit fishy here. I better watch him. Now your judgment's impaired. You're not partial to one fighter over the other. Therefore, you're not able to exercise and do your job correctly because you're taking one side over the other. To me, I don't think that's fair. So no matter how it breaks down, he's still in the wrong. If he knew about this, he's in the wrong for taking the bout, and then definitely he's in the wrong afterwards for quote unquote whistleblowing, because he was complicit in the action. He still took the fight knowing that whatever corruption may have happened. But I want to go back to the first one, because the first one is what he said on the night. He saw his eyes roll in the back of his head. Well, I'm sorry. Can you see my eyes through this tight guard here? I've got big gloves on. How do you know that my eyes rolled in the back of my head when my hands are up here for the entire time? There's only one moment it wasn't, where he fell sort of back into the ropes, but I saw it. He looked fine to me, and then again went back lucid. He was fine. So overall, out of everything, I would just say, just come out and say, maybe I got this one wrong. I was premature. What he's got to say is, I maybe jumped in a bit too prematurely. I didn't like the fact he didn't really engage at that point in time, and I was trying to protect him. If you say that, we're still gonna be like that we're still gonna say what we're gonna say, but we might not say as much. But now you're giving us all different types of narratives as to what's gone on in this scenario. So yeah, the way I see it, I mean, I think it's time for him to call it a day. Look, everybody is great at some point, right? You have your moment of excellence, and then we have what's known as a decline. Like when you're a peak athlete, you're at a certain peak, you reach that peak, and then there's no way further. You're down from there. Well, he's had his peaks. He's been an exceptional referee over the years, but right now, a lot of his more recent performances are very questionable, and it's time for him to basically to bow out, because you can't have two high profile incidents like this where, because no one else, there's no other referees that are getting spoken about the way he's getting spoken about within the space of a year. None over here, none there. I haven't heard. There's been, even when people used to maybe say things about sort of Jack Reese, it was like bits of hearsay here and there. But this is the only person where consistently weeks after a call that he's made, sometimes even now you think about it, it's a year, because people are now going back to the same horrendous error he made last year in the same vein and saying, well, which one's worse, that one or this one? Because at least that one went 9 rounds. This one, first round. That's how people are looking at it. So yeah, I think his time's done. And if it's not done, he at least needs to be demoted down to, like, I don't know, maybe the area level or the Olympics or whatever the the amateur trials, and then have to work his way back up if he wants to remain. But yeah, I don't really believe the I don't believe the Facebook post of all things. But could it happen? Maybe, but maybe Nevada's one of the strictest commissions from what I've heard. So those kind of things, and so I think it was D-Style that said, I mean, are you really gonna risk your reputation and your licenses and your sanctioning abilities for Vergil Ortiz against Vergil Lawson? I don't think that's worthy of making that, making that sacrifice. If it was a Crawford and Spence type fight, okay, maybe you might want to push the boundaries. But Lawson, no, ultimately you just find that you normally have another opponent on standby anyway. Find another opponent, and I'm sure Lawson would have had some tests done the week before, when he first got into the country, so he would kind of know some of this stuff. You just have another one on standby and say, well, he couldn't make it, so boom, we go again. But yeah, that's my take on it. It's an unfortunate situation, and I don't even want to really sort of beat down on Tony Weeks, because again, he has been a class referee over the years, but there's just too many poor mistakes, and like he has to be admonished for it at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Inoue Zilla, for the 199 super chat. He said Vergil versus Tszyu, end of 2024, fire. I agree. I agree with that. Lee, I'm going to go a different route with you. You know how sometimes in boxing they say a fighter loses his killer instinct, doesn't really have the stomach for the violence anymore, and his mentality changes. Tony Weeks has seen a lot of fights, a lot of action, a lot of brutality over the years. He's kind of getting older. Do you think maybe this guy's lost his stomach for the violence and he just really can't take as much of it as he used to back in his younger days? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know about that, but I think one fight that could serve as the root for the stoppages that followed was he was the third man in the ring when David Morrell fought Aidos Yerbasanala. And Yerbasanala suffered a brain injury that ended his career and threatened his life. So he was criticized for allowing that fight to go on too long. And perhaps that planted the seed that could have led him to stop the Ismael Barroso fight too soon. And it may have served as the route by which he stopped the Vergil Ortiz fight too soon. We're also living in a highly litigious society. New York State Athletic Commission they lost a lawsuit, paid 8 figures for I forget the name of the fighter who went down, Russian fighter.
Was it Magdamedov? Was his name Magdamedov, Lee?
Yeah, I think that's Magomed Abdusalamov. That was his name.
Oh, okay.
Magomed Abdusalamov. Thanks for jogging my memory there. And so there's the risk, to letting fights go on too long. As far as the eyes rolling up in the head, the only time that I saw on the video where his eyes might have rolled into his head was the first punch high on the head that kind of discombobulated him. I don't know what angle Tony Weeks was when that shot hit, but the camera shot indicated that his eyes kind of shot up into his head, that he was, in trouble. And as far as, you guys brought up a lot of really good points. There are a lot of unanswered questions here. The social media post, if indeed he wrote it, and apparently he did, I don't know, but that really dropped a bomb on the Nevada State Athletic Commission and prompted all these questions about all the things that went on in the fight. And as I understand it, referees aren't told about this medical information before fight. So if he knew about this, who told him? Was it a cornerman? Was it a doctor? Was it an inspector? And as far, he could have recused himself. He could have been a whistleblower, as D-Style said. Or he could have taken the route that, say, Ray Arcel took when Benny Leonard launched his comeback 7 years after he retired. He was in a fragile state. He needed to make money. And, he took the assignment as a trainer because he felt that he could best manage Benny Leonard's career so that he can match him up against opponents that wouldn't hurt him. And then after, having 10 or 11 or 12 fights or something like that, he was forced to fight Jimmy McLaren. And McLaren stopped him in 6 rounds and Benny Leonard's career ended. But he sort of shepherded Benny Leonard through those other fights, knowing that it could end if something, if he made a wrong decision. Tony Weeks may have said, all right, I know this situation. I have years and years of experience, and if I see one thing that goes wrong, I'm going to step in, use my experience, and stop the fight. That's probably the best case scenario here. That's probably the best case scenario. All the other scenarios are bad. You mentioned about the HIPAA violation, and that if indeed he did that, that could lead to, Tony. It might not even be Tony Weeks' call as to whether he's going to retire or not. He may be let go over this because that puts the commission and it puts Tony himself in legal hot water. And one of the remedies to perhaps mitigate the damage is to let him go. I don't know. There are a lot of things about this story that we simply do not know. And the best thing that we can do is just wait for all the information to come out. There may be an investigation by the commission to see what all had happened. It's just not a good situation. And, we thought maybe the dawning of a new year would maybe signal a turn of fortune for boxing in some of these ways. Well, considering this happened on the 6th day of the new year, maybe not so much.
I just wanted to say something in regards to the Magomed situation. Just really quick. I don't want to see referees or any commission use that situation as a crutch, or that's why we're being super safe or whatnot. Like, here's the thing. We don't want you to be super safe. We don't want you to be like barbarians either. We just want you to stop a fight when the opponent can no longer defend themselves. That's when you want to stop the fight. Whatever happens to a fighter, unfortunately, we cannot control. We are watching a combat sport. It is dangerous. Everyone kind of knows what they're signing up for. Of course, we want to be as responsible as we can. The Magomed situation, and the reason they lost the lawsuit is because they made him take a taxi to the hospital. And there was no ambulance available for them to rush him to the hospital as soon as possible. He was vomiting in his dressing room after being examined by the doctor in the locker room. And now, because of this, if I'm not mistaken, all the commissions, especially in New York, need to have an ambulance ready to go at all their events. So something good came out of that. I just wanted to kind of point that out.
Lee, you kind of lit a light bulb in my head, and you bring me back to an interview I had with the late, great Steve Smoger, who I consider probably arguably the best referee in boxing when he was alive. May you rest in peace. I asked him about when you're refereeing fights and you know certain guys have reputations, or you see certain situations arise with a specific fighter over and over again. And I say, do you bring that into the next fight with you? And he said, no. He goes, each fight has a life of its own. And, you know, he used to do seminars and help train young referees and stuff. And, you know, he would say that. He said, each fight has a life of its own. You could say to a fighter before a fight, if he had a reputation for doing something, I heard so-and-so said you have a reputation for doing this. I'm just going to let you know I'm going to keep an eye on it or whatever. But again, human nature does set in. And I didn't really remember that whole situation with Morrell, but that's a great point, because again, when something like that happens on your watch, just like when a fighter seriously injures, or even, you know, at the worst case, kill somebody in the ring, that's something that they take around and carry that around with them for the rest of their life. And they have to deal with that trauma. And the referee who was also involved in that situation, you know, if that happens on his watch and he's involved in a situation very similar to that, then I'm sure that must weigh on him too. So that's an excellent point you made. And I really never thought of that. And I think that's very relevant here, you know? Okay. So let's talk about the fight now. Vergil Ortiz obviously wasn't really much of a fight, but after the fight, he called out Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu responded on Twitter. He said, "Yeah, let's do this, right?" So I want to just get everyone's thoughts on this fight. Early. I know it's early, but if you were to just break this fight down, how do you think it goes, and who would you pick to win this fight? We'll start with you, D-Style.
Well, look, first of all, the fight itself, I think, is a great fight. It's a great stylistic fight. Anyone who's ever wondered what's Tim going to do when he fights a guy with a good jab, well, this is a fight where we would find out. They have different styles, but at the same time, they complement each other very well. I think Vergil works more behind a jab. If anyone hasn't noticed, he has a very similar style to Errol Spence. They started in the same gym, you know, and all that. So they have a very similar style, but they've gone different directions. So there's some differences, obviously. But for the most part, I would say about 90% of their style is very similar. Like 90% DNA is shared there. So can pick up the pace. I think he's a buzzsaw, great body puncher, goes, you know, up and down. It's just all around. And Tim's is the same way. It's just that I feel like Tim's like more selective with the punches he's throwing. He's more economical and a little more accurate from what I've noticed. It's just that Tim uses the jab differently, and he has a really good jab, just uses it very, very different. You know, but I think the styles will complement each other very well. Look, you're not going to like this answer, but I don't know who would win right now. I think that's a very tough fight to pick. But what I will say is this: I would still favor Tim because it is his weight class. We know Tim can make the weight class. We don't know if Vergil can make the weight. He fought at a catch weight. So those 2 pounds could be the difference between, you know, showing up to the fight or going to in an ambulance again. And then we cancel the whole event because Vergil ended up in the ER again. We don't know if he could make the weight. And that's why I believe and have reason to believe that Team Tszyu is not going to be in a rush to do that fight unless they have proof and evidence that Vergil could make 154. They don't need another Charlo situation where the week of the fight, the whole event gets canceled. And boxing, whether we like it or not, is a business. We're in the business to make money. Nobody makes money if the fight gets canceled last minute. And I cannot in any way, shape, or form hold Team Tszyu, you know, I can't hold that against them. They have every right to question whether or not he can make 154, right? And it's a fair question. Like, can Vergil Ortiz make 154 pounds comfortably and healthy? Because that's what it's going to take if you want to get in the ring with somebody like Tim Tszyu. So I would favor Tim Tszyu based off of that. But assuming, this is the assumption, if Vergil Ortiz can make 154 pounds healthy, he's a danger to anybody, right? He is capable of beating Tim Tszyu and vice versa. I think it's a 50-50 fight, quite frankly, in that case. And I think he's capable of beating everybody at 154. And yes, that is including Crawford. I'm not saying I would favor him against Crawford, but he would be a legitimate threat. I honestly believe that. So don't sleep on Vergil. He's been one of my favorite fighters for a long time. I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a great role model for Mexican Americans out there. I hope he's healthy, and I hope to see him do great things, and I hope to see him fight Tim Tszyu. And it's great to see two fighters where it's like, look, we're used to seeing all these fake beefs and I'm going to beat you up. Now I'm going to beat you up faster and this and that. And the fights never fucking happen, right? There's another one we're going to talk about a little later. But here, this was just two men saying, yo, I want to fight Tim Tszyu. And Tim Tszyu saying, hey, I'm keen to do it. Let's go. Let's rock. And Vergil said, I knew you would. That's why I called you out. And there's a lot of respect with that. And I do miss the days where more often than not, these fighters acted like grown men, right? And challenge each other to fight, not because it's disrespect, but the opposite, because it is respect. And great fighters should want to fight other great fighters. Those are my thoughts.
Base, this is a tough one because you don't have much data to go off. D-Style made outstanding points breaking this down, but we don't have a lot of data to go off of with Vergil Ortiz at 154. But we have a ton of data to go off of with Tim Tszyu. Give me your early thoughts on this matchup. I know it's hypothetical, but I do envision that it could happen at some point, maybe later in the year, if Vergil has a couple fights in between, because this fight didn't last much longer. So I'm sure he can go back out there really quick. So yeah, just give me your early thoughts on this matchup if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to that, I agree. He was in there for less than a round because it wasn't even a completed 3 minutes. So what was that, 90 seconds, 100 seconds of the fight. So he's still fresh. Took absolutely no damage, no punches. So he needs to get back out active immediately just to at least find out what proper punches at 154 feels like. And sort of just get acclimatized to that and that motion. And preferably, if he has like one fight now, when that fight, say, lasts 9-10 rounds, okay, cool. Go into the Tszyu fight after that, provided obviously, again, it's not at a catch weight. Although I agree with D-Style on that one, but what I will say is I think just because it was straight after Christmas, they said, you know what, cool, we give you an extra £2 because of the time of the year. But yeah, I don't think the next one can't be anything above the 154 limit. And if it is, then that's what sends alarm bells. And then he may actually just be on his way to 160. And these are just some gradual growing fights to that. But yeah, if he can get one, maybe even two more, jump on the card that Golden Boy have got happening in March, or maybe one in April, even if he's got to go across seas to, one, when they do one with like your Costa Valle, go to Costa Rica, just get on the undercard of one of these fights just to keep busy, and stay active for the next, sort of 5-6 months. See how you feel after like July, and then come that time, yeah, call out whoever, and I'll be more than happy to watch that fight. It's very interesting stylistically. I mean, they both exhibit similar traits, but he'll definitely be more of the boxing guy of the two. Tim Tszyu's gonna look to try and break him down, wear him out with a bit of applied pressure, smart body punching. Whereas a lot of the stuff that I can see Ortiz wanting to do is obviously setting up a lot behind the jab, maybe keeping distance until he's able to land a killer shot before getting in close and making it that type of fight. But it wouldn't be boring in any shape or form. And if I know that Tim Tszyu said that he only wants to fight in the States moving forward for the rest of his career. But I mean, if it comes to a point where the only way that fight can happen is in Australia, I'm sure he'd probably be willing to do something like that. But yeah, like I said, provided he can actually, make the weight, as D-Style said, no problems. If he comes in another fight again and is over that certain limit, then that's when the alarm bells start ringing. But I would like to see him back out by April at the very latest, because there's no reason for him to take 5-6 months out of the ring. Now, Golden Boy, just keep him active, and let him make up for the lost time. For 17 months is still 17 months at the end of the day.
So Lee, this fight was at 156, as everyone mentioned, right in between the two weight classes, pretty much dead center. Does he stay at 154? Because base raises a good question. Does he stay at 154? You would think he would, because that's where the money is. Or does he go to 160? How do you see his career progressing moving forward? And is this Tszyu fight look like it's going to happen in the near future, maybe later in the year?
This is one of those fights that we didn't know we wanted to see until it was actually brought up. And then when it was brought up, we go, oh yeah, this is a good fight, and it looks like it's possible. It would be one thing if Vergil was at 157 or 158, closer to middleweight, but this is 156. It's closer to 154. It's a couple pounds, and I think if a championship is on the line, Vergil Ortiz will do whatever he can to make 154, and I think he'll make it safely. I think that, when I first heard about this fight, the phrase scientific violence came to my mind, because both are bona fide punchers, but they also set up their power with skill and intelligence. It's the kind of fight that will appeal to the masses, but it will also appeal to those who like to watch the sweet science in action. I agree with the panel by saying that it shouldn't be next. Vergil should have a couple of 1, 2, maybe even 3 warm-ups. Just get on while you can, because 153 seconds isn't enough, especially when you haven't fought since August of 2022. He's got to get more reps in. He's got to sharpen the skills even more. And also, I read a story right before the fight saying that Vergil has bills to pay. He's been inactive for 17 months and no money's been coming in. So he's got to fortify that bank account. And of course, the Tszyu fight would be the crescendo of the money-making fights that he could make. In terms of how the fight is going to turn out, at least my initial thoughts on it. If Ortiz gets the sufficient number of warm-up fights before facing Tszyu, assuming everything is in proper order, and in boxing, that's, you never know, but assuming that everything is lined up, I think that Vergil Ortiz wins the fight. He's taller, he's a little bit longer, and statistically speaking, he has a much better jab. Tszyu uses the jab as really a setup for his power shots. For Vergil Ortiz, the jab is a weapon, and since he is taller and longer, that is going to be the punch to determine how the fight is going to unfold. Because if he can keep Tszyu at a distance, Tszyu is going to have to come to him in order to do his damage. And Vergil could use the jab to make sure that he stays in Vergil Ortiz's proper range. And of course, 20 knockouts in 20 fights, we know that Vergil Ortiz can really, really punch. And don't forget, Tim Tszyu was dropped by Terrell Gaucher in the first round of their fight, and he was decked in the first round of a fight with Wade Ryan in 2017. So he is vulnerable early, and early is when Vergil Ortiz appears to be at his most effective. If the fight is held in Australia, I do think that Tim Tszyu has a much better chance. He feeds off the home crowd. He feeds off their energy. Vergil is going to be fighting outside the country. It's a very long trip. There are complications with food and the time zone difference and everything like that. That will enhance Tim Tszyu's chances of victory. But as of right now, right now I'm edging Vergil Ortiz to win the fight.
Very interesting breakdown. They had very good points as well. Manny, let's just assume both guys are at their best. How do you see the fight playing out?
If that's the case, 100% Vergil Ortiz. No doubt. I mean, he's just an exceptional human being. I think touch base on that. He's very humble. It's good to see him back around the neighborhood. Lives in the next subdivision, and so running around, seeing him back active, that's pretty good. He's a community guy. He's a guy that works hard. And I can understand fans were very frustrated at that stoppage. You know, seeing Vergil coming back, being local here in Grand Prairie. You know, we want to see him in action. We were devastated when, you know, he got diagnosed with rhabdo, how critical and dangerous that condition is. Couldn't make the weight at 147. And then when we heard he's moving up to 154 and finally he gets a fight with Lawson, we were like, we want to see how he comes back. Can he make that? Even if he did a catch weight like he did, I think it was a brilliant idea to start getting them into a rhythm into 154. This is why I trust so much what he's doing in the back end, because that is business in boxing. Taking care of yourself, knowing your limits, not to push it, but especially when you're coming back from horrible, you know, fights. What was it? 3 times it was postponed, that fight. Couldn't make that 147, collapsed. I mean, just to think about some of the things he went through, and you touched something real importantly there, that, you know, obviously economically he's not a flashy guy. He doesn't want to take Tszyu or call him out because of the money, right? He's very humble. I think he's set. He's probably set. And the way he's, you know, him and his family have driven the business, you can see that we're working our way up to maintain that 154 pounds. That's why I don't have any doubts, nor I will never question what their team is actually currently doing. Now, with that being said, us fans wanted to see a whole lot more from him. We like his excitement, what he brings to the ring. That one of the most memorable fights that I was present there was Kavaliauskas, how he got tested hard. I don't think that he's going to get tested as hard as Kavaliauskas. I think for me, I think, you know, Kavaliauskas is a stronger. He's a puncher. He punches hard, and he was able to do certain things and show himself that he can actually hang, you know, with the big guys. When you think about the resume, and you guys touch base on that when it comes to Tszyu, absolutely, he's got more experience in the 154. He has fought. That fight with Mendoza was fantastic. I enjoyed that fight. He was tested, right? These styles said both styles, they match equally to each other. And I totally agree, although I do know that Tszyu starts a little bit slower. Vergil's going to put a lot of pressure. He's going to use his jab to his advantage. It's going to be a brawl. It's going to be who's got the best condition at the end of the day. And the second thing is how he would react based on, I just don't know how he's turning as it pertains to this condition. He looked good, but that's it. Just one round, it wasn't enough for me to say right now, you know, with the questions that I ask, I can't say right now, Vergil. I have to give it 51-49 right now to Tszyu. I love Tszyu. Base, you mentioned something. He wants to find the state. This is what this fight's going to happen. He doesn't want to go back to Australia. He has said it. He made a statement. And I think right now, this can be a huge mega fight in Las Vegas, with all the hype, with all the odds and the betting and the gambling and all that, and giving people the excitement. With respect, they call each other. With respect, they responded. This is class act boxing, in where at times we do lack in that. Can you think about right now about the money aspect of it? You know it's going to be there, but no one's really thinking that each fighter wants to call them out because of the money. And we'll talk about a subject later on about someone calling someone about the money. Does that make sense? So it does make sense for boxing. It gives us what the fans want, us as Vergil Ortiz, and I agree with D-Style. I've been following him forever. He's one of my favorite boxers right now. I was devastated about everything that happened to him, and I'm pretty excited to see. That was the first message that I sent my brothers. All right, that night I said, "Damn, Tony Weeks, son of a gun." You know what I mean? Because I wanted to see more. I wanted to see how he reacts to that new weight, to more power, to someone that, I mean, come on, guys. You know, Lawson wasn't any shit out there. I mean, he 30 plus fights. He's got experience in the ring. He punches well, but wasn't given a fair chance. That's why we were all frustrated about that. But at the end of the day, this is going to be very interesting. I can't wait to get finalized. And you know what? You know, Golden Boy wants to make it happen. Why not?
I just want to say this. So I think, like, I understand, and it's even been explained to me directly why they want to fight in the United States. And I'm not even complaining, right? But I get that. And if that's your plan, that's great. But I just think it's a mistake sometimes to give out your playbook to everybody, right? So from my understanding, Tim Tszyu has been having a hard time locking in a certain fight because for whatever reason, the opponents think they have more leverage than they really do. And they're really using this whole, like, well, you're not going to go to Australia anyway. You said you're going to fight in the U.S., so they're kind of using that whole thing. If I was Team Tszyu, I would use the Australia card. I would say, look, I could always go to Australia and make some money, so I don't need the shit, right? They should leave it open, and from my understanding, they are open to going back to Australia. It's not a closed door or nothing like that. But at the end of the day, I just think that's what they should do. It's kind of similar to like when Canelo made it obvious that he wanted to become undisputed, and PBC kind of used that against him in negotiations to the point where the fight with Plant didn't even get done for the Mexican Independence Day weekend. They had to move it over to November because they knew, like, well, you already told us what you want. You want this. You want the IBF belt. So we know you're bluffing when you tell us you have other options, right? And I think, in my opinion, I would pivot a little bit. I was Team Tszyu, and I would say, you know what? We are willing to go back to Australia for the right fight, and if it makes sense, because I think it'll give them more leverage in negotiations. Something I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like when you're going to buy a car and you go to the dealership, and if you let the salesman know you really, really want that car, you can't really play hardball with the guy, right? It's the same similar situation.
And one last thing, Joe. One last thing I just got to mention, because I think the style and on the base of touch base on this is what exactly would we want at times, us that we analyze a little bit more of boxing. And I absolutely agree with you guys. Is we want to see him a little bit more. We want to see another fight with him. Someone out there, I don't know. I mean, Liam Seeps, someone that can actually, we can see that he can make the fight. No catch weight, test yourself in there. A strong opponent that, you know, we can make it out here. Whether it's in Dickies Arena, he feels that packed up. UTA, he can come in the American Arena and just give the fans another opportunity to showcase himself, but also for himself to be able to prove that, yes, my conditions is not affecting me at all, and I'm 100%. I'm 100% for another fighter that is 110% at this particular time.
Got you. Shout out to Inuezilla with another $1.99 super chat. He said Robert Garcia said both teams already been talking. I don't disagree with that. I wouldn't doubt that.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
yeah, seems very plausible.
They would want it.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. This is kind of bizarre. These two men fought 6 months ago. The rematch clause was already announced that they were going to have this second fight, right? Seemed both Spence activated it, and Crawford accepted it, and we thought we were going to get this fight in the near future. It's already, like I said, already been 6 months, and now we get hit with this news from Spence that he just recently had cataract surgery, so he's going to have to be out another 2 months before he could start training again, which leads me to believe that we may just not get this rematch. There has to be some sell-by date on this thing. I don't know if there was something in the contract that the rematch would have to take place within a specific period of time. But like I said, it'll be 8 months after the healing process. Base, are we going to get this fight at any point this year, or do you think Crawford will move on? And lastly on that, Crawford hasn't been in the ring for about 6 months, and he doesn't have anything on the table right now. So is he only going to fight one time this year again? Is he going to be inactive again? I just don't like how this whole thing is playing out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And from what I know, very basic and very crude information, it could not be factual at all to all contracts. But as far as I'm aware, the rematch clauses are usually only 6 months. They can take, you can sort of exercise them within a 6 month period. And then I think it's supposed to be like 90 days from the end of that 6 months for them to be executed. So I don't know. And the only way I think that changes is ultimately if you exercise it, but then you agree obviously to a further date or you agree to an extension. I can't see any reason why Terence Crawford would agree to an extension for a fight that at this point is not going to sell. Firstly, the rematch can't sell because of how dominant he was in the first fight. So even if we look at, for instance, the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, right? So the second fight did, sort of really big numbers, even, whether it made its money back or whatnot, it did massive numbers because it was a rematch to a fight that was entertaining, competitive, ending in a draw. The third fight, most people say was much better than the second and much better than the first, but it didn't sell nearly as much because the second was so dominant. So why is Crawford's going to want more money to go into a fight that's going to sell less than the first one? Well, what promoter's realistically going to do that? So they initially said that the fight had to take place by December. That was what they first said. And obviously, I know the Showtime situation happened and whatnot, so I don't know how much that affected it. And then they said, well, it needs to be, it was being scheduled for February. And then this whole thing comes out, and the PBC Amazon thing don't even have a fight date announced at this point, let alone a fight. So if I was Terence, if he is actually saying, well, look, I'm bound by this contract, so I'm going to honor it, I'd be looking and saying, no, I need to find, can I come out of this thing, because this guy's wasting my time. Like, you guys saw what happened the first time. He's still trying to keep me on the hook for this fight. He just had surgery. Like, so with that, the earliest this fight can happen is April, at the absolute earliest. And even then, I don't think that's enough time. So realistically, you're looking at May or June. So you're right. It looks like another one fight a year, because I doubt he's going to fight in June and then fight again in December. It's normally, when you sort of get to those ages, it's very much like one at the start of the year and then one towards the end, as opposed to like one right in the middle and then one at the end. So I want him to be more active. Again, I didn't have him in my fighter of the year list because he only fought one time, as bad as that sounds. And as great as the performance was, and as much as I know he is one of the best, if not the best, like boxer in the world, I couldn't put him in the list. And if he only fights once this year, especially considering all the stuff that's going on with like the Saudis and everyone else, like it's gonna be even less ground for him to be able to make up, in my estimation. Now, I'm just I'm a regular person. My word doesn't really mean anything. But if you've got someone like me who's one of his biggest admirers as a boxer, and I'm critical of that, and I'm definitely someone that's supporting, and as whenever I've had to, I've purchased every single pay-per-view, or I invest my time and everything into his fights for 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, I'm up watching his fights, but I need to see him back active, and if he needs to try and find a way to get out of the Spence fight, if there's no concrete date set within, say, the next couple of weeks. And then he's got to figure out what he's doing in terms of if he's going to move to 154, if he's going to stay at 147 to reclaim the undisputed, or if he's going to see if he can continue to goad Canelo, or even if he takes up after the Ortiz and Teofimo fight, if Teofimo comes through that and then decides to exercise I'm not sure if he's the WB or super champ, because I think you have to be unified to have several defenses beforehand. But if he can get super champ status and exercise that, then I'll be quite happy to see him have that fight. But I just need to see him fight at least twice this year as an absolute minimum. But yeah, I don't see this fight. I don't see it happening next. Whether it happens down the line, like maybe at the end of this year or maybe next year, possibly, but I don't see it happening in 2024, personally.
So, Dave, given this recent news, and welcome, Dave. Nice to have you on the panel as always. Given this recent news with Errol Spence revealing that he just had cataract surgery and it's going to take 8 weeks for him to be able to start training again, which that'll take us into, I think maybe we're in January now, so probably the end of March, beginning of April, he could start training again. Does this rematch happen? And if Crawford doesn't get a fight signed quick, like if he doesn't get a fight signed and it's not scheduled for, June or July, he may only get one fight in again, and that can't be good for him. So how do you think this whole thing plays out? I turn it over to you.
Oh, man. I don't think that fight with Spence materializes in the first half of this year. And I think it'd be silly of him post, now he's past mid-30s now, right? He's approaching 40. He's closer to 40 than he is mid-30s at this point. He needs the biggest fight that he can get in terms of financially, makes sense business-wise, but also accolades-wise. And he's on the cusp of being a 5-weight division champion. I want to see him take on Tim Tszyu because it looks like Jermell Charlo is going to have legal issues coming this year, and we don't know how that's going to play out. We've talked about Jermell Charlo, what happened with his wife and their relationship and the domestic violence charges that can materialize in jail time. It could also be a bad look at the moment. But for me, what I would like to see him do is we saw Tim Tszyu this past weekend absolutely have a great attitude towards the idea of fighting Vergil Ortiz. But for Tim Tszyu, if he's willing to fight Vergil Ortiz, he's willing to fight a once-in-a-generation type fighter like Terence Bud Crawford. I think he is. And Tim Tszyu's, he likes the idea of coming to the U.S. and becoming a crossover star. So that fight is perfect for Las Vegas. And I think that's the route that Crawford should go. I think he should go for the 5th weight division and go and see if he can work something out with Tim Tszyu, who seems to be game for anything.
So, Lee, do you think that Tim Tszyu fight could possibly be next for Crawford? Because I'm very skeptical that this Errol Spence fight comes off.
I don't know what's going to happen. When this contract with Spence and Crawford was made, the hope was that the first fight would be compelling enough and competitive enough to justify a second. And if there's a different winner in the second fight, then probably a third. But then, those of us who picked Spence to win the fight was basing our prediction that we were going to see the Errol Spence that we had seen over the past five plus years. And that's not what we got. That's not what we got. And we also had a Terence Crawford who was at the absolute peak of his game. He took advantage of the situation and he just absolutely tore Spence apart. And that's the image that everybody has now of that fight. How in the world could they sell this rematch? But it's mandated. It's contractually mandated. He is committed to it. And so he's kind of trapped. He's kind of trapped it now. The only potential selling point of a rematch would be that Spence wasn't as bad as he seemed in the first fight, and Terence Crawford is a little bit older, and maybe he won't be as good as he was in the first fight. That's it. That's pretty much it. I mean, what kind of footage could they use to sell the rematch? Because to me, the only round Spence won was round 1, and that was a squeaker. The rest of it was all Bud Crawford. Yes, it's in the contract. Yes, Spence is entitled to the rematch. But how can the investors make the money to pay the promised purses without taking a huge financial bath? I don't see how that fight is made. It doesn't make any sense, but there is that mandate. He's stuck in it. And now Spence undergoes surgery. He won't be able to start training until late March, early April. He's going to need at least 8 weeks, maybe 10, to get back into somewhat good shape. That pushes it into June. June for a fight that nobody really wants to see. Crawford's in a bad spot. Spence is in a bad spot. The promoters are in a bad spot. But that's the spot that they're in right now. It's unfortunate. I don't want to see it. And as far as Bud is concerned, you know, his performance sort of opened the doors to all sorts of possibilities. You know, there was talk of Canelo. There was talk of Jermell Charlo before Charlo had his issues. There's Tim Tszyu out there. Tim Tszyu's now talking about fighting Vergil Ortiz, so who knows what's going to happen there. It seems that Crawford, for all of his talent, and he has considerable talent, he's a generational talent, his career trajectory has been so star-crossed. You know, if he had it his way, he would have fought Manny Pacquiao when both were under the top-ranked banner. Manny Pacquiao was still the star, the money-making star, and Bob Arum did not want to throw Pacquiao in with Crawford and have Crawford win, because even though Crawford would have probably beaten Pacquiao, he would not have become Manny Pacquiao as far as global fame and money-making ability for Bob Arum and his company. So that's why that fight didn't happen. And then he's the odd man out while all the other welterweights were with the PBC. And so he had to wait and fight all these other guys. And Sean Porter was the closest thing to a marquee fight that he was able to secure while he was under the top-ranked banner. Then he had the BLK Prime fight and knocked out Avanesian. And finally, the Spence fight was made. And when the Spence fight was made, it was not an all-time great fight. It was an all-time great lopsided fight, lopsided performance. So if Bud is bitter, I don't blame him. He's 36 years old. He probably has 2 or 3 more fights in him. And the longer he stays out of the ring, and my podcast partner, James Smitty Smith, brilliantly tied inactivity with Father Time. When you're inactive, it is a lot easier for the effects of Father Time to sneak into one fighter's body and take a hold. If you're active, you're holding Father Time off by fighting regularly and keeping your skills sharp. But now Crawford's in a situation where for years and years now, he's fighting once a year. And when he comes into the ring, he performs well. He has 11 straight knockouts. But we just have to wait and wait. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for him. It's frustrating for us. It's frustrating for everybody.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Manny, do you think that this rematch clause has expired at this point, or what do you think is going on here?
I don't know. I mean, I think that it was too soon for him to, you know, exercise the rematch, if you ask me. My concern here, guys, is the lack of information that us fans we know about. Okay, we all know that October 2019, he suffered an accident. He had come back in a devastating one. He had come back, fought Danny Garcia, was supposed to fight Manny Pacquiao, and in 2021, he at that point had suffered an injury in training camp, which actually that's what the fight was actually called out. It was detached retina. With that point on, that fight got called out, and then he had came in and of course, you know, fought Ugas. He looked great. He looked great. You know, people had hopes, especially us locally, had hopes that Spence can come back and finally make that fight happen right after the Ugas fight. And so my concern is 29th month later, all right, after you suffer that detached retina, you are going to get a surgery. Okay. And so this is even after the fight against Crawford. And so the thing about it is, was that all due to the issues of the accident? Is Spence the same guy? Is he just unstable? Is he mentally where he needs to be? Guys, landing in your face in a Ferrari, speeding up, just getting boot out of it. I mean, come on, just think about it. And it's sad to even think myself about that, because for me, I think that although a lot of people agree with me, what we knew about Spence is gone. It's a sad thing. I just don't think he can beat Crawford. At his best, yes. Post that, no. And so he can train well, he can dedicate. Problem is he balloons up to 170 and you see him out in the streets and then he comes back down. I just don't think he's taking care of himself the way that a fighter needs to. And on top of that, after the devastating accident, how is he going to come back after this surgery? And you were right, Lee. It takes 8 weeks to heal. 8 weeks to heal. But you're not going to start training even at the 9th week. I think you're going to slowly start doing exercise, progressing into that. What about when you get into the sparring portion of it? Is that going to take effect? Are you going to get hit? Even though you are protected, but at the same time, you have to be in optimus condition to fight Crawford, which I don't care if Crawford doesn't fight. He's Crawford. He's a beast. He maintains himself in shape, and he's ready 24/7. I have no questions about that. My question is, can Spence be that same person, and can he actually be able to maintain a very strong, committed training camp to get to the level that Crawford is right now? Because he's ahead of the game. He's completely ahead of the game. What Crawford's still grinding, working on his craft. What do you think Spence is doing right now? We don't know. We don't know. We don't hear a lot of things about here. They keep it all closed out. So the information we're getting, it's just probably misleading. I think it has to do more with the accident, and I just think he's not the same person, and I don't think he will ever be the same person. So to base point, I don't think this fight's going to happen even after the summer, if you ask me. It's going to take some time, and I just don't think it's the right thing for him to fight Crawford as he ahead of the game instead of taking a tune-up fight to see how he responds about the latest surgery. So I get there's a lot of money. I get there's a lot of people lead great point in terms of like the ROI and the shit. Am I going to get my return if I'm an investor? Because these guys are going to get paid massive money, right? And so, yeah, people are going to be paid the pay-per-view. They're going to buy $10,000 ringside or even higher than that. It's going to be crazy, but it's going to be more crazy on the Spence side. And I feel because even though Crawford's growing and has done a lot of great things, I believe his fan base has probably equally gotten into Spence, and probably may have surpassed it. But with the streaming, era that we currently have, that takes a big dip. Is it makes sense as it pertains to business? No. So that's why I feel it's not going to happen. I was very optimistic in the first fight. I waited so long. I talked about it in every show in our show. Yes, it's going to happen. They call me delusional. They call me crazy. But we had to wait, and it did happen. Very disappointed. Why was it disappointed? You got a stronger boxer who's ahead of the game. He hasn't been hurt. He grinds every day, right? Prime. And I'm not a Crawford fan. I lost a huge bet on Spence. Disappointed. But I have to give it to Crawford. Crawford right now is a beast, and he's in his own planet. Prime. That's it.
All right, so D-Style. Hard living outside the ring, right? Excessive drinking, excessive eating, blowing up in weight in between fights, car accident, right? Retina surgery. Now we got the cataract surgery. I already didn't want this fight. Now I want it even less. What do you think, man? With all this snowball effect and the hits just keep coming with this guy.
It's kind of like, let me give you every reason why you shouldn't want this fight. You know what I mean? Here's another one. Like, I mean, I just don't. All this is doing is holding everything back. I want to move on. I want to move on. I want Crawford. I want fresh new faces. I heard about like the hype for Crawford Spence. I mean, even Errol Spence was tired of the hype. I remember him tweeting out, y'all been going out to 7 in the morning at 7 p.m. But y'all got jobs. Like you're debating about me and Crawford all day. Like there was people that debated Crawford Spence all day, every day for hours. And there was people that would threaten each other's mamas and all crazy type of shit. This is crazy. like people stopped being friends, like beef started. People were threatening to shoot each other over this fight. And what happens? Crawford goes out there, beats the hell out of him. It's not even close. And now he's having the dude's falling apart. He's admitting he wasn't living the lifestyle of a fighter. Let me tell you something. Time is relative. Crawford may be older in age, but he's still a younger boxer than Errol Spence. Errol Spence is an old, washed-up dude compared to Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is the same age Bernard Hopkins was when he destroyed Tito Trinidad. If you think he's going to be out of his prime like any month from now, you're out of your damn mind. Terence Crawford is still a player as long as he wants to be a player in the game. He's a dedicated. He lives a lifestyle of a fighter. Speaking of B-Hop, and guys like that are going to be around for a long time, especially in today's age with the advanced medicine we have today, with the advanced technology we have today. Okay, Crawford's going to be around for as long as he wants to be around. I could almost guarantee you that. And there isn't a 154-pounder on the planet. You put his name that I believe beats Terence Crawford right now. He is the man until proven otherwise. Like that's just point blank. Period. But I want to see like some young lions fight him. I want to move on. I'm tired of this Errol Spence thing, right? And speaking of being tired of, right? We got 66 people live. We've been at 21 likes for the last 20 minutes. Can you hit that like button? It takes 3 seconds. Boom, there you go, okay? Just bring down the chat for a second, all right? Put down your beer for a second. Put down your popcorn for a second. Hit the like button, and then you can go back to the chat. I'm just saying. Hit the like button. Show us some support. Come on, let's go. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. That's it. Don't be like Errol Spence. Like just keeping us waiting for the like. Be like Terence Crawford. Be about that business. Hit that. Remember how Crawford hit that jab on Errol Spence's face and knocked him down? Right? That's how we want you to hit that like button. All right? Let's go. Let's be winners around here. Okay. Do you want to see Crawford fight Tim Tszyu, Vergil Ortiz? If you do, hit the like button. If you want to be like Errol Spence, okay, and you can't hit the like because your cataract, you can't see it, then don't hit it then.
All right, so we're going to keep it right on Crawford. And I'm going to kind of piggyback off something Lee said. He says, you never know you really want to fight until you first hear about it and it gets proposed. And I'm going to be honest. When I heard Teofimo Lopez call out Terence Crawford, I was like, wow, this really isn't a bad fight. And D-Style and I talked about this, and I said, outside of Errol Spence on paper, who's really would be a better opponent than Teofimo Lopez? Who's a better fighter on Crawford's resume? You can argue Gamboa maybe, but again, he was really never a big lightweight. He was always, 126 pounder. That's where he made his bones, right? And obviously he's very skilled, but I think in terms of just guy being in his prime, athletic, the right size, just everything, I would argue on paper, this would be probably the best opponent outside of Spence for Terence Crawford. No disrespect to guys like Sean Porter. So, Dave, when you heard Teofimo Lopez call out Terence Crawford, and you know that it seems unlikely that this rematch with Spence is going to happen, right? And then you're hearing Teofimo Lopez kind of crap on all over Crawford's resume, saying, oh, you beat guys that were damaged, that are coming off injuries. I'm a healthy young guy in my prime. Come get this. What are your thoughts, man? Are you excited as I am about this fight potentially?
Right away, I thought about my conversation with Teofimo last Saturday at the Virgin Hotel. I asked him if he was going to get the pay-per-view that he rightfully deserves, and he told me he doesn't have any interest in being a pay-per-view star. And I thought that was cap. I thought it was all in jest, right? Because pursuing a fight with the man, Bud Crawford, the undisputed welterweight king, that's epic. That's epic. That's a tremendous pay-per-view, and Teofimo is a tremendous opponent for Terence Crawford, a guy who, just about arguably cleaned out 135, beat the lineal champ recently, and when maybe performance of the year when he beat Josh Taylor. And now he's chasing greatness again, saying, I'm here. I'm willing to fight you. I'm willing to move up. But also, Devin Haney's been signaling that there isn't a major fight at 140. which is kind of signaling to Teofimo he's not interested in unifying those two belts. So I think him being proactive makes great sense, saying I'll move up to 147 and I'll take on the best fighter, that probably the best, just simply the best. But going back to that question where I asked him if he was going to get a pay-per-view, obviously this would be a tremendous pay-per-view, right? Obviously. And I think, honestly, he makes a great opponent for Terence Crawford, and one that maybe Terence Crawford should consider. He should potentially consider this as a opponent for him. If he wants to stay at 147, if he doesn't go up to 154, if he doesn't pursue the Jermell Charlo fight or the Tim Tszyu, staying and defending against Teofimo makes a lot more sense than taking on the IBF champion. What's that? The guy from Philadelphia. Makes a lot more sense. That's way too much high risk and low reward, right? Teofimo is the name. He's made a name for himself. He has a crossover appeal. He's been featured on ESPN multiple times with fantastic ratings. So this is the guy. I think this is a rightful opponent for him at 147 pounds.
Lee, do you like this fight as much as I do?
I would probably be more excited if Crawford would fight Tim Tszyu going up to 154, or Jermell Charlo for multiple belts at 154. But if the Spence fight can get gotten out of, Canelo's fight dance card appears to be filled up for the year. There was, Jermell Charlo, there was brief talk before Charlo's fight with Canelo that maybe Crawford would fight him, but Jermell laid an egg, and now he has all these legal problems. That's probably not going to happen. So this is an attractive option. This is an attractive option for Crawford, and it would be a favorable one for Crawford because Teofimo would be coming up in weight. And he would have and Teofimo would have even less punching power at 147 than he has shown at 140 pounds, which was nowhere near what he showed at 135. And as far as, power is concerned, like I said earlier, Crawford's on an 11-fight knockout streak, and a lot of those fights took place at 147 pounds. So, as far as the charge of fighting damaged opponents is concerned, two of his biggest victories came against Vasily Lomachenko and Josh Taylor. Vasily Lomachenko fought that fight with a damaged right shoulder that needed surgery days after the fight. And Josh Taylor hadn't fought in more than a year, and he was probably dead at the weight at 140 pounds. Now, Teofimo did what Teofimo should have done. He fought the man in front of him. He looked good. He defeated him. They got the W, and he got the accolades that he deserves. But as far as fighting damaged opponents, that's what Crawford should come back with. Okay, what about those two fights? And then there's the trash talk from Teofimo. And I can understand why he's doing it. He wants to get the big fight and the big payday that it represents. But hopefully Teofimo will take into account the last time an opponent got a fight by getting verbal with Crawford. That was Jose Benavidez Jr. And we all know what happened to him there. Crawford outclassed him from start to finish, and then he scored a violent knockout in the bout's final moments. Physically speaking, they have similar dimensions. They're about the same height. They have similar reach. But as skilled as Teofimo is at 26, Crawford is even more so at 36. Teofimo showed great ring IQ in beating Lomachenko. Lomachenko was considered one of the highest IQ fighters going. And he went thought for thought as well as punch for punch with him. And he won the fight. But Crawford's ring IQ is even higher, and he's shown it over the long term. He's very consistent about that. And then there's Crawford's versatility. He fights well from both sides, while Teofimo is strictly a right-hander. Finally, Crawford is coming off a superlative performance against Spence. And sure, the version of Spence that Crawford beat wasn't the Spence that we had seen over the past 5+ years, but that isn't Crawford's fault. He took what was in front of him and he performed. It lifted him to a higher realm in terms of how he's perceived by the public and how he's perceived by historians. And if Crawford can't get the really big fights that would enhance his legacy at 154, winning a 4th divisional championship, if he beats Charlo and Tszyu, he becomes undisputed in a 3rd weight class. Then why not fight a star fighter like Teofimo Lopez, where Crawford seemingly has all the advantages except for age?
Lee, both these guys can talk when they're pushed, and Teo knows how to really push a fight, talk a fight up. Base, I just think that this is a can't miss. I think this would do well, and I love the Tim Tszyu fight too, but that may not materialize right away. So again, you need a fight in the interim. You could do this fight first, have one more fight at 147, and then move up to 154 and fight Tim Tszyu maybe later in the year if you can get that fight while he's waiting for the Vergil Ortiz fight. What do you think, man? I mean, is this kind of a plausible type situation for Crawford?
It's plausible. However, I want to make a certain point just before we all kind of get our hopes up here. So I think a lot of us obviously watched the Michelle Joy Phelps interview on Boxing Social where he spoke about all of this. And if you remember, he said that when he was fake retired, they had made offers to several people, right? So you made offers to, I think he said they made offers to Devin Haney, made offers to Ryan Garcia, made offers to Terence Crawford, etc., etc. Well, every single person he made an offer to had a fight at that particular. They was actually in a contract. So were you just making offers so you could say, oh, well, I tried to offer them, fight couldn't happen, so I just had to take the next best. Now, I actually think Jermaine Ortiz is a very good opponent, and he's not a foregone conclusion in any way, shape, or form. So he might need to get off of Twitter, X, thinking about Crawford and Haney and everyone else, and worry about who he's got in front of him. That, to me, might be the first smart thing you need to do. But what I will say, and again, I think the same similar thing happened with Subriel Matias. From what I've heard, like he had heard that Subriel had the surgery on the hand, and then that's when he sent the offer. And then they said, well, no, we can't do February, just come out of surgery, but we'll do it in April. Obviously, he's taken the February date, makes sense because of Super Bowl and everything. I get that, but he hasn't necessarily said, oh yeah, well, I'm looking to revisit that one now. Or as soon as I get through with this, I want them to get back into talks with him for unification. He hasn't said that. Now, I'm going to give him grace until February to do that. But if that's the case, again, to me, it might just sound like you're using other names to keep you hot at this point in time. That's sort of the way it's coming across. And until the fight happens with Ortiz, then I can't, I don't necessarily know how honest he's being or how invested I can actually take or invested I can be in the situation. But if we talk about the actual fight itself, if he activates that status for that WBO, and I said, yeah, I want to go up and I want to fight you, more power to him. And the only way to me Crawford gets out of that without being called a duck is essentially if he takes on a much bigger or a much tougher fight. Now, would a fight with Tim Tszyu be tougher? I don't know. Tim Tszyu might actually be quite tailor-made for him as an opponent. Would a Jermell Charlo fight be tougher? Probably not, based on what Canelo did to him and the fact that he looks like he's all over the place now anyway. Probably isn't going to fight again for next period of time. So really and truly, the only fight there's only two fights you can essentially quote unquote duck Teofimo for and not be called a duck. That's a Boots fight for undisputed again at 147, or it's the Canelo fight at 168, or maybe a 160 belt. But there's no one at 160 that's going to give him the numbers he wants. So yeah, if Teo calls it, I want to see it. Um, but again, until the Jermaine Ortiz fight is out the way, I don't know how much stock I can take in Teo's quote unquote callouts because every single one of them at the moment is caveated. And he even said in the same interview, like, I wasn't really retired, I did it for publicity stunt. Like, so I already know he's thinking about what's going to keep him relevant or what's going to keep his name out there. And if it's about calling out fighters that just so happen to be in contracts at the time you called them out, yeah, that might do it. Could give you a plausible deniability. Oh well, they couldn't fight me, so I'm on to the next person. And the vast majority of the public aren't going to check to see who's fighting and who's not. They're just going to hear the words and say, "Oh, yes, everyone's ducking Teal. No one wants to smoke with Teal." It's a very good spin, but I'm just not buying it yet. But if the fight happens, yeah, I want to see it 100%, and I'll pay for it. If I can make it, I'll go to it as well. It'll be a fight, but I know how the fight plays out, so I'll just go there just to watch the massacre.
It's funny, Base, when you say the fake retirement, because that's just what it was. Because during that interview, he kind of told on himself. He goes, while I was retired for 6 months, they were trying to reach out and make fights for me. Why would they try to reach out and make fights for you if you were seriously really retired? You just friggin' told on yourself. The guy, he's his own worst enemy sometimes. He really, really is. But you make some great points, and you could be right. Manny, is Base right? Is Teo clout chasing here? Does he really want this fight, or is he clout chasing?
He's clout chasing. That's all there is to it. And listen, I agree with Based. I would watch the fight. I'll pay for the fight. Why not? It's a boxing fight. Anytime you see that in this era, Crawford fight, you're gonna plug in. You see Canelo, you're gonna plug in. You see all the other stars growing at the 135 and even 130, even Navarrete, you're gonna go plug in. There's no question about that. But I think right now is Teofimo trying to get some more of the spotlight, about the Jermaine fight. Made it happen or not, that's another fight he's got to focus on. If you're 140, you got to take care of business. I think he knows that he has earned the right to at least attempt to go out there and call names like Crawford. Didn't do it with respect the same way Vergil did it. That's why I'm kind of upset with the way he handled it. And I like Teofimo. I like the guy. I have no problems with it. Even though I did see him, he did perform regardless. Lomachenko had, injured shoulder. He did what he had to do. He just didn't do it with, Kambosos. Oh, wait, I can't make the weight. That's your problem. You move up in weight, and now you start exploring a different division. And all of a sudden, you get the fight you want. You beat the man that Lee mentioned, damaged. And so you become a world champion, and you're one of the top of the 140. To continue to make the statement and make sure that anything that goes on in the future, calling in Crawford, you got to make it interesting. Crawford right now can stay laid off because he may not find the fights and the money that he may want, and that's okay. He's going to be very limited. But I just don't think right now for Crawford, if I'm sitting in his seat, I'm looking down. I'm sorry. Okay. I have proven myself more, not with damaged fighters, but I've proven myself. Well, Spence was damaged. I got to say that. But, he has proven himself. A lot of people question Crawford at the 140s. Okay, great. But he moved up to 147 and did what he had to do and, fought all these guys to be able to become a world champion again. So beat Spence. He's on top of the world. Why not calling the person who's on top of the world? Get exposure. Get people talking about it. This is why we're talking about it, aren't we? Because he made the call out. And so right now, if you want to secure a fight with one of the best fighters, top 3 pound for pound, you have got to make sure that you continue to build your resume. De La Hoya was wrong about many things in the 140. By the way, shout out. Love you, Jose Carlos Ramirez, joining De La Hoya, bringing it into the mix of the 140. Another future contender for this division. But they are better fighters. There are champions. You don't want to fight anyone else in the champion with a champion, fight Jermaine. You're probably going to perform well, And I think this is going to be a great match for him because, you know, even though I like, you know, Jermaine, I just don't think that he's at the level of, you know, Teofimo, but he can give the run of his money. And that's what I like about those fights. But you want to get your name out there, then why don't you go ahead and fight Haney, for instance? Or why don't you go ahead and fight, you know, I'll take Rolly away because I just don't think, but why don't you fight the guy that's right behind me? He may not be the best right now because a lot of people are questioning and saying Haney is the best skilled, the best resume. I get it. I understand. But this guy back here, Subriel Matia, he's the most dangerous guy at the 140 pounds. If you want to make a statement for yourself, and if you want those top dogs to really see what you're doing, you have got to fight the best in that division. And what a better way to do it, whether it's with Subriel Matia, whether it's even Regis, whether it's with Haney. Fight the guys that are on top of your division. Let the guys that are on top see what you're doing, and then that's really going to make sense. But this is all about him. He's always had problems with money in top ranks. I mean, look at the contract issues when he was fighting Lomachenko. I want this. No, I'm giving that. No, I want that. I want that. I earn it. Yes, you have slightly earned it, and I think you have put your name in place to maybe possibly call out people. Congratulations for that. I like you, Teo. I'm a fan. But at the same time, I think you got to focus on the food that you got in your plate instead of looking at the buffet and say, you know, I want the prime steak out there. Because you ain't ready for the prime steak right now. You're just ready to make the cash and the money. And at the end of the fight, it'll be head down. I make the cash. I made the money. I try my best. It's not all about that. Beat the guys you got at 140. Make a statement. As a matter of fact, you don't want to fight any other champions? Fight Jose Carlos Ramirez and see what you can do with a former champion that kind of ruled the division at 140. Why not? I get it. You beat Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor didn't fight in quite some time. It's a disadvantage, right? You probably feel your best weight. I get it. 147 immediately with prime does not make sense. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that kind of burst your bubbles, but it just doesn't make sense for me. Would I watch it? Yes. But it doesn't make sense.
Shout out to Nando with the $4.99 super chat. D-Style, will Terence Crawford or would he call Teofimo Lopez's bluff?
Look, I know a bluff when I see one because I'm a poker player. Right now, Teofimo is moving all these chips like to the center, knowing damn well that he's over there with Top Rank in ESPN, knowing damn well that Crawford's over there with PBC, and they don't even have a schedule set yet, right? Like he's doing it, like he knows what he's doing. Like he knows he's going to get the quote unquote publicity out of it. He's getting people to talk. Like Manny said, we're over here talking about it for that reason. But look, the fight intrigues me. It really does. But let me just put it this way. I'm not against the fight. I'm not going to get in the way of the fight. I'm all for the fight. All right. Okay, cool. And this reminds me a little bit of the Gamboa fight in the sense of the athleticism of Teo. I think early on he will give Crawford a lot of problems, but eventually Crawford will figure him out and hurt him really bad. Crawford's not a guy that just outboxes you and makes you look silly for 12 rounds. Crawford's a destroyer. And if you want to start the end of your career early, by all means. But it's not just going to be a regular fight. It just isn't. Okay? And you're going to become another one of those guys that people are going to look at and say, yeah, he beat him, but he was a little guy moving up in weight to fight Crawford. They always make up all these excuses when Crawford beats a dude up. It always happens. And it's going to happen with Teo too. I like Teo. I would rather he stay at 140 and let your body dictate when it's right, you're ready to go to 147 instead of forcing yourself to 147, right? Let your body tell you when you're ready to go up. You are not a huge 140 pounder. Just stay at 140. There's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of really tough opposition. That's what I would suggest you do. But I'm in no way, shape, or form an advocate against the fight either. If he wants to do it, it is a big event. I would be all for it. Okay, it will take some co-promoting going on. I'm all for that too. But it wouldn't end well for Teofimo Lopez. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, when I talked about this fight, and I've been talking about this fight, I said this would be the right fight at the right time. And when I'm talking about Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou, and I know it's getting backlash. I know people aren't excited about it. I know people would have rather seen him fight Zhang. I get all of it, but I still think there's intrigue in this fight. I still think this is going to be a massive event. And I have no hate for this fight. Manny, what are your thoughts on this fight? Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou.
I mean, you know, I have a lot of emotions here, and I got to be very, very cautious how I bring these emotions. You know, like I normally say, conmigo no. Conmigo no. Sometimes I just, smell things and I just don't like it. And I can understand a lot of people may think, well, man, you're a Joshua hater. It's not that I'm a Joshua hater. I just feel right now that Joshua cannot beat any of the top champions right now. He won't beat Fury, and he couldn't beat Usyk. All right. Can he do it with Wilder? Well, Wilder just really disappointed a lot of people. What's left? The cash cow of the UK? Go continue to make its them and try to come back, and knowing that and he did win a lot of fans when he fought Fury, and a lot of us did see that fight, closer to what it looked like. Whether it wasn't Fury that he wasn't at his best, or he was just joking around, just thinking I'm fighting someone outside of boxing world, coming from the UFC and being different. Shout out to Mike Tyson. He did a fucking well job doing that, and I think he'll do better. But I don't know, man. And with all respect with Joshua fans, I just, for me, makes sense for him. Gives him a chance to go out there and continue to stay active at that say, and until something gets built that he can definitely come back and prove at this level. I'm not saying in the past. A lot of people come back to me and start talking about, well, man, he beat such and such, and he did that. He became a champion, and he ruled the world, and he's making a lot of money. I get it. I get it. I get it. What are you doing for me now? After Andy Ruiz, man, I'm beating the dead horse every single time about this. After Andy Ruiz, Joshua, it's not the same. He looked good last fight. We're all happy and jumping up and down. Finally, we're seeing Joshua coming back. All right, that's the guy that's making a lot of money. But what? Maybe I'd want to see it with Wilder. That'd be a much better fight, interesting fight for me. Because honestly, I just don't think right now, what kind of skills you're going to test yourself? Which I believe that, he can perform a lot better than what Tyson Fury did, but I just don't think Tyson Fury was at his best. I think he just took it as a joke. Saudis are giving me a lot of money. They're my fans. They love me, right? They love me. They have money, And now the Saudis have a change of mind. You're good to that. Now they love the other guy that, they probably think they most lost a lot of money, but they probably think that, hey, yeah, we can, follow on this one. They got the money to pay for it. Why not? They want to see action. This is their entertainment. They're paying millions and millions of dollars just to sit there and being entertained. Love it. I'd love to have that lifestyle. Why not? Right? And I think right now, okay, I'll watch it. I'll pay for it. I am expecting AJ to, annihilate him. I am expecting that. I'm expecting him to use that jab and just take him, for what it's worth. Right? UFC fighter jumping into the boxing world, doing good, perform well. And I do look forward to seeing out performing even better. So it is okay for me right now. I'm not jumping up and down, because if you want to prove that you are the best and you are the cash cow of the UK, making all this money, you got to do it in your quarrel. You can't just come out and say, I live in here, but I'm going to jump out of the side, out of my zone. And so, because there's a huge disadvantage, to be honest. And in fact, Ngannou beats Anthony Joshua. He's a hero. If Anthony Joshua beats Ngannou, then he's just a UFC fighter. So there's really not a whole lot to prove other than making El Cachimiro. That's what I say. So this fight, conmigo no. I just don't. You know, I'll watch it. I'm gonna watch it. Why not?
Is this going to be an annihilation D style? Is there danger here for Joshua?
I'll say this. I'll keep it very brief. My boxing brain tells me Joshua should win this fight relatively easily. It's what it tells me. But Tyson Fury fucked up everybody's head with his shit performance, quite frankly. But we're gonna find out how much of it was Tyson Fury's shit performance, how much was it Ngannou had a great performance. I will say this. I think Joshua either wins a decision. If he decides, you know what, I'm not going to risk it here. I'm just going to play it safe. Let me just box him. That's one way he could win. Or I honestly think people are just overstating how Ngannou has this great chin or he has a massive neck. And I seen him get hurt and buzzed in MMA matches by punches. And people could save me, but the gloves are smaller, but they don't hit like heavyweight boxers. And the impact is the same. It's not, the curvature on the knuckle is the same on a boxing glove as it is with the MMA glove. It's the same thing. It's harder to land clean with a boxing glove, but that's not here nor there. AJ should win this fight, but make no mistake about it, it's still heavyweight boxing. One punch can change everything. Like the disaster can happen. If Joshua isn't quote unquote careful, because at the end of the day, these are two mammoths punching each other. It is what it is. But I'm favoring Joshua to win this fight in one of those two ways, in my opinion. And I'll leave it at that.
Lee, you've been watching boxing a long time. I would consider you a purist. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you get behind a fight like this?
Well, look, I understand why the fight was made. The original intent of the Day of Reckoning card was to set up Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder for March. But now that Wilder had lost, AJ had to find a new opponent. And what better way to maximize the payoff while limiting the risk than to pick Ngannou, whose star in boxing is right now at its positive peak due to his better-than-expected performance against Tyson Fury. From a financial standpoint, purely, it's the best option for Joshua outside of the Fury fight. And also, it's the best fight that could be made for Joshua from a risk-reward standpoint. I see Ngannou's career path. Let me get historian on you. I see Ngannou's career path being very similar to that of Pete Rademacher, who famously challenged world heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson in his professional debut. And in that fight, Rademacher actually knocked Patterson down. And for a brief moment, Rademacher had visions of being the heavyweight champion of the world. Unfortunately for Rademacher, Patterson got up, he scored multiple knockdowns, and he retained his title by TKO. Now, the next time that Rademacher got into the ring, he did so against a top contender in Zora Foley. And Foley stopped Rademacher in round 4. That effectively ended any thoughts of him being a potential heavyweight champion. Now let's look at Ngannou. In his professional boxing debut, he faced the WBC and lineal champion in Tyson Fury. Very few gave him a chance, just like very few gave Rademacher a chance of beating Patterson. But Ngannou scored a knockdown and ended up losing a split decision. In my eyes, two of the major reasons why Ngannou performed so well are these. One, Fury was not there mentally against Ngannou. He saw this as a big money exhibition against an overmatched opponent, and he entered the ring to put on a show. Meanwhile, Ngannou was there to put on a fight, and he got caught. He wasn't all there. And why not? His title wasn't on the line. His mind wasn't there like it would have been if it had been Wilder or Joshua or any other top heavyweight, if they were standing in the other corner. And here's the second one. Ngannou had the element of surprise. Sure, we all knew he had one great one-punch power. I think he has the world record for being the hardest puncher ever. But there was no video of him engaging in a real boxing match under real conditions because this was his pro debut. How could anyone have known how he was going to perform? But now that the AJ fight has been made, there is video of Ngannou as a boxer. And because of that, now everybody knows his strengths and weaknesses as a boxer. Just like a rookie quarterback in the NFL who starts out very well. The other coaches are looking at the tape and they are plotting all sorts of tactics to neutralize what he did in that opening outing. And that's what's going to happen here with AJ and his team. They're going to treat Ngannou with respect. They're going to prepare accordingly. And AJ is going to use his size. He's going to use his strength. He's going to use his boxing ability. And he's going to use especially his experience to systematically dissect Ngannou. And then if he sees the chance to put him away, he'll put him away. He has the means by which to put him away. He could score the TKO. He could score a rather lopsided decision. But either way, I see Anthony Joshua in control and basically ending the illusion that Francis Ngannou is a world-class heavyweight title threat.
Dave, I'm seeing polls out there that people are saying Ngannou is going to win this fight. Like they're 60-40. Some of them are 65, 45. It's kind of crazy. Like there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of aspirations behind Francis Ngannou because of that Fury fight.
They bought into the puncher's chance. I'm convinced that Tyson Fury rolled out of bed that day and said, let's go to work. I don't think he had a training camp. I honestly don't think he had a training camp. Listen, Joseph Parker just had an incredible performance on Day of Reckoning. That's the guy I wanted to see fight Anthony Joshua. Both of those guys ended 2023 on a high note where we showed where ring activity really matters to stay at the top of your game. Anthony Joshua's kind of having a resurgence and turning his career around, bouncing from trainer to trainer. He's looking close to being the old Anthony Joshua. For them to announce Ngannou as his opponent, I think that the Saudis are doing things their way, right? They're not traditional at all. And ultimately, they really want to see is Tyson Fury fight Anthony Joshua in Saudi Arabia. It's making that tremendous super fight. But that's presuming that Tyson Fury is going to beat Usyk. And I would never entertain in the conversation Usyk versus Ngannou, because I think everybody here on that panel would unanimously say that Usyk would smoke Ngannou. But suddenly we're supposed to imagine that Ngannou and Beeb, you just pointed out there's a poll that thinks Ngannou's going to win this fight.
More than one.
More than one. So they really
there's a few crazy.
They really sold the general public or the casual public that might buy this fight that Ngannou could pull it off again. You know, all we're gonna see in this fight is to see how much better Anthony Joshua is going to perform, and he's going to perform 100% better than Tyson Fury because it's such a low bar. And Anthony Joshua has shown us that he's really trying to overcome all the criticisms that we've laid, the boxing fanatics have laid on him, that he's no longer got the capacity to take punches, his punch resistance is shot, mentally he's not there. I think he could stop Ngannou, providing Ngannou doesn't land that lucky punch.
Base, are you going to buy this pay-per-view? And do you think this does big numbers in the UK? You know the market over there.
Yes, it will definitely do. I think it will do better numbers than Fury and Ngannou did. Yes, I would buy it. I didn't buy the other one out of protest for Fury obviously being the champion and taking this fight as opposed to fighting other challengers. With AJ, I don't have it the same way because ultimately he's always kind of held to a higher standard than Fury anyway in everything he does, but ultimately he's got no belts. He's been active, fighting actual fighters. He's not holding anything up by taking this fight as a keep busy. We already know he wants to remain being active. So he's not just going to have this fight and then not fight again until December next year. He's going to do something in between. So I don't really have an issue with it. But funnily enough, shout out to October Red. She Sean George, Zhang Jilei's trainer, on earlier on today, or technically yesterday for me, but they actually said that Sean George said he actually predicts Ngannou to beat AJ in the middle rounds. Food for thought, very interesting. I can't see it personally, but there's obviously more scope and stuff that needs to be done, more research that needs to be done. Look at both of them sort of in fighting styles, but realistically, Anthony Joshua, being the guy who's been boxing since the age of 18, you know, half of his life, he's 34 now, going to be 35 this year. So realistically, that's the person I would put my stock in, and knowing one thing above all else, whether he is as quote unquote naturally talented as Tyson Fury or other people, he's definitely a much harder worker. He's studious and he's always in shape, and he never disrespects the assignment. So with all of those things in mind, I would have to say it's, you know, it's very favorable that he comes out either with a mid-rounds type stoppage or with a very comfortable points win. But I definitely am happy to see it, and I will watch it quite comfortably.
All right, fight of the weekend. We're going to go around the panel real quick. Artur Beterbiev versus Callum Smith. How do you see this going, and who do you think is going to win? D-Style.
I think my pick is Beterbiev. Look, I have a rule. The closer we get to a fight, all the hype and all the overthinking happens. Always. It almost never fails. Who you believe will win before the fight's ever even official is usually the way to go. I've always felt Beterbiev would win this fight. I'm seeing people getting their hopes up, and I see people making it more than what it is. And like, let me tell you something. If you believe Beterbiev could beat him, nothing's changed. You're just falling into the illusion of fight week is all you're doing. Eddie Hearn saying with confidence that his guy is going to win by knockout is him being a promoter. That's not, he's not the oracle. Like, you know what I mean? He shouldn't allow that to quote unquote make you second guess whether or not Beterbiev's going to win. Beterbiev, while I understand it's boxing, anything could happen, yada, yada, yada. We know that's the case in every fight. But the smart choice, the smart money, in my opinion, is Beterbiev to win this fight. I think he will stop Callum. Callum had his bicep torn up by Canelo. Well, I'm not scoffing at the punching power of Canelo. Canelo, I think, well, I've never been hit by Canelo or Beterbiev, and I never will, hopefully. I'm willing to bet that Beterbiev's a bigger puncher than Canelo. And I think he's going to be landing not just on the arms, I'm sure he will in this fight, but on that long torso. He's going to tear it up. And I see Beterbiev stopping him in inside 6 rounds. I think it'll be an utter destruction. That's how I see this fight. Beterbiev.
Okay. Dave, is Eddie Hearn selling hopes and dreams? Does Callum Smith have a shot here?
Beterbiev is a wrecking machine, but even more dangerous with elevated testosterone levels. I don't care if he's approaching 40, but and it's unnatural to be having elevated testosterone levels as you approach 40. It's usually the other way around. But he's a wrecking machine, and I think D-Styles nailed it, man. This guy is going to chop down the tree. The recipe, it's already there. What Canelo did to Callum Smith, I think Beterbiev is even more of a dangerous puncher, and he's been at this weight class for a very long time. Nothing is going to derail the super fight between him and Dimitri Bivol for 175-pound supremacy. I see a late stoppage. I see a fantastic late stoppage.
Okay. Lee, Eddie Hearn said that this would not be an upset. He's predicting a Callum Smith one-punch knockout, right? He says he got one-punch knockout power. Is he right?
It's possible. I mean, look at what he did to Lenin Castillo. One-punch knockout, and Castillo was vibrating on the canvas for 7 seconds. He knocked out Bodorlik in 4 rounds. But Beterbiev is a much, much higher level than either one of those two combined. There are reasons to think that Callum Smith can win. He's 6'3". He has a 78-inch reach. He knows how to use the jab. In fact, he holds the CompuBox record for most jab attempts at a fight at 168 pounds, 852 against Nikki Holskin. And those 852 jabs are the 5th most ever recorded by CompuBox in any fight, regardless of weight class. So he knows how to use the jab, and that is the key to possibly scoring the upset. He has to keep Beterbiev at arm's length, and he's got to do it for 12 rounds. However, and of course, Beterbiev is almost 39 years old, and he's been off for nearly a year and all that. There are reasons to pick Callum Smith, but here are the reasons why I'm not going to pick Callum Smith to win. First of all, Smith is no spring chicken at 33 years old. Second, although Beterbiev is fighting for the first time in nearly a year, Smith is coming off the longest layoff of his career, nearly 17 months. Recent history suggests that fighters coming off very long layoffs in big fights are going to lose. Third, I ran the long-term CompuBox defensive numbers for both men. And the most glaring difference, and that's the biggest glaring difference between the two of them. Beterbiev's is better than average. Callum Smith's is below average. And fourth, for all of Smith's height, reach, and boxing ability, he likes to exchange. And when one decides to exchange with Beterbiev, who has 19 knockouts and 19 wins, disaster usually follows. So therefore, while I think that Smith will box his way to an early lead, Beterbiev will eventually cut the distance. He will start to lay his hammers on him, and he will force Smith to exchange with him. And when that happens, Beterbiev will stop him. My pick is Beterbiev by TKO in round 11.
Base, I'm seeing a good amount of people from the UK picking Smith. Are you one of those people?
Hell no, them people are delusional. As much as I think Callum Smith is one of the best, or is probably the best light heavyweight in Britain, as I've always said, he's got the credentials behind it to kind of back it up. Ultimately, his biggest issue is that for all of his height and reach, he doesn't use it. He likes to sort of try to bang on the inside, and he likes to control tempo. Well, in the several times that we've seen him not be able to control tempo and control distance, he clams up. Maybe he tries to look for a little counter shot here or there, but ultimately he doesn't do well fighting off the back foot. He just sort of shells up, and then he doesn't get to exchange, and he allows the other person to do what they want to do. We saw Canelo obviously punch his bicep off his arm just by you shelling up and doing that. And that was Canelo's game plan, to hit your arm so that you can't really defend, so he can get to the head later. Well, Beterbiev is not going to be throwing his whole body weight behind shots like Canelo Alvarez was. He's literally just going to be rotating a tiny hip here and hitting you about 80% of his power, shot after shot after shot. And unless you actually are prepared to exchange with him, there's not really a lot of there's very few options that you have. Like that whole counter left hook thing, it might, he might get through with a couple of those, but I'm pretty sure at this point Beterbiev knows that that's going to be the one shot Callum Smith is sort of looking for and hoping is going to change the tide into his fashion. But the only way for him to really win this fight is to make Beterbiev walk onto his power, so stay in long range and long distance, which is just not something he's not going to be disciplined enough to do. Even though Buddy's in his corner, and Buddy's a much better trainer than Gallagher was, at the end of the day, he still is who he is, and he's still going to revert to type when the shots start flying from both guys, and he's going to allow Beterbiev to collapse that pocket. And as soon as he does that, that's where the sort of the end begins. Now, I think he's probably got a very good chin, so I think he will be a bit durable in that sense. But yeah, I also do think that the KO streak continues. I normally don't give my predictions on here, as you know, but I'm quite confident and quite happy to give this one. I'm predicting between rounds 10 and 11. So that's my prediction.
Are you going to be unanimous there in the pick, or are you going to go against the grain, Manny?
No, I'm going to stick with the beast of 175, and that's Beterbiev. Nothing away from Callum Smith. I think he has proven himself. 2 fights at the 175. He championed, before he fought Canelo. He lasted 12 rounds to Canelo. What a lot of people said that the best guy at that division was Billy Joe Sanders. He got knocked out. He got whooped, and he lasted him the 12 rounds. I think Callum Smith is a lot better than Anthony Yarde. I think so. I really do. And so even though Beterbiev had issues, and I don't want to say didn't struggle, but he started kind of a little bit slow. And this is where Callum Smith needs to be take advantage of the reach and also double jabbing to make sure you get him in the distance space. Just really took the words out of my mouth. You just got to keep him in the distance. You just got to be cautious to not get into the moment, because when you allowed your opponent, you open up yourself, and then they come in the inside, which is Beterbiev's what he wants. And if he allows you to corner you in the ropes, then that's where we're going to have an issue. And I think that if you keep him in the distance, you're probably going to shock the world. Double jab, use your power, but you got to do it from the distance. And the problem is that Beterbiev, on purpose, he opens himself for you to come out of your game plan. If that's the case, can you go out of your game plan, but you actually back up and return back to your game plan? That's the question about Callum Smith. There's no questions he's got talent. But I think right now, because of the way, and I tell you what, 40 gets better with the testosterone. So to your point, Joe, I mean, this guy's in a different level, and we all know for a fact the fight that we want to see at 175, and that's Bivol against Beterbiev, and this is route to that. And so, what a better way to match up two guys? There's only two guys in the division that can fight, three actually, besides Bivol, but that is Callum Smith and Watson. That's it. So shout outs for making a really good fight happen at 175, exposing Beterbiev to see what he can do against another great opponent, former 165 champion, moving up, impressing a lot of people in there. But, like I said, he's better than Anthony Yarde, and I think he's probably gonna get caught, and that's gonna be in the 9th round. And it's just the wrong time right now, because I think Beterbiev is just, even though he's up in age, I think he's got more left, a lot, than what people think left in his tank. He gets hit a lot, we get it, but that's how he feed his energy. He tests you, you give him the best what you got. If you don't rock him, for a fact that he's not going to stop coming forward and going to continue to pound you until he corners you. And unfortunately, going to be difficult to get out of there. One punch can make a big difference, and Beterbiev has the power to make that difference. Now, 9th round stoppage for me.
All right, no surprises here. Guys, that'll do it. Thank you so much, everyone on the panel. Thank you, everyone watching, and thank you, everyone in the chat. This was a very, very great discussion tonight, and hope everyone enjoys the fight.
Yo, keep voting. Thank you for keeping us, always inviting us. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Bebo!
Uepa!
Uepa!
Peace.